Whoever has a l'chaim, please indulge. All together now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaroi.
Amen.
Whoever has
Amen.
a l'chaim, everybody, ulivracha.
Okay.
Today is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Chaim, welcome, Margot. Thank you for joining. Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the first day of the month of Nisan, the month of redemption. So this is the month. We were redeemed in this month, 3,333 years ago precisely. And we will, God willing, be redeemed this month, individually and collectively, with Mashiach l'chaim. Wow. It still goes down like water. I can't figure that out. How's everybody keeping? Great, great.
Great.
Are you feeling great? Yes?
Absolutely.
So I have a question. Is that because you're great? Was that a trick question? Got you a little trapped, maybe, perhaps, maybe not. So tell me.
Working on it.
Well, wait a second. Working on, if you're feeling great, I'm asked a question. Some people answered yes, and I think you were one of them, Leah. So my question now is, what does that mean? Because you're great?
Is it because?
So
I'm saying I'm working on being great.
Oh, so then you'll feel great? Now you don't feel great?
Then I'll feel more great.
Mm-hmm. I'm putting you through the grater.
I'm feeling great because I'm about to study Torah.
Oh, okay, Irma. You've been around too long. You got the right answers. Very good.
I agree with Irma.
Yeah, I guess you can't disagree with that. However, the truth be, let's be honest, and just a reminder, folks, if you have something to add, to question, to say, just unmute yourself. So, Talmud tells us there are no two minds alike, no two faces alike. Everybody's unique. That means we're all special. So we're all special. If you feel your specialness, then you're going to feel your greatness and you're going to feel great. Does that sound good, logical? Or is there something missing there? Anybody? Not all at once. Is there something missing to that statement that was just made? One word. Doesn't sound very humble.
Hashem.
It doesn't sound very humble.
Humility.
Humility, exactly. There seems to be some lack of humility in that statement. But is there a truth to that statement? Yes.
Can you repeat it for me?
Oh boy, that now you're putting me through the grinder. I hope so.
There's no instant replay.
No instant replay, right? No two people alike. God makes us all unique. If I'm unique, I'm special. If I'm special, I have something great about me. And therefore I feel great. That was the statement. But it sounds reasonable. But as I suggested, that there's something lacking there. There's something missing. There's something not quite succinct. And what is it? The humility. So the question is, how does such a statement being said that is a statement of truth, right, is indeed a statement of truth. It's not, lacking something there in those words. And yet at the same time, that there is a humility to that. So how can we make sure that it doesn't become full of arrogance that can lead us down a slippery slope into the abyss? So we're going to learn from two very great personalities this week that will give us a little insight into that. And that will be from the third book, VaYikra, in English, actually not English, Latin, Leviticus, but VaYikra. And we'll learn from there. And we're going to learn, let us, share the screen. Oh, welcome, Joel. Thank you for joining. So, when humility isn't healthy and pride is perfect. All right, is there a correct balance between humility and the need for self-importance is our question. So let us look at the very beginning of the book of VaYikra. And God calls to Moshe. And God spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying. Now, if you were to look in a Sefer Torah, in a Torah scroll, then you would see that this word VaYikra, as you can see actually over here, it's written with a small aleph. There are three sizes in the Torah: big, medium, and small. Medium is the regular letters. Small is the aleph that you can see over here, right? And sometimes there's a big aleph, or big letter rather, which we'll get to in a moment. So why is this? What is the small aleph over here? The commentators explain. Perhaps the reason for the small aleph is in line with what I wrote previously, namely that out of his great humility, Moshe distanced himself from any sort of prestige. He fled from the stage so much that God had to call out to him. That's the aleph of the word VaYikra. And he called, God called. And it is in a small letter. So the author is referring to the previous instance that God revealed himself to Moshe, which was at the burning bush, telling Moshe they had chosen him to take the Jews out of Egypt. And Moshe responded then, if you recall, in the book of Exodus and Shmos, and now behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression of the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now come, and I will send to you to Pharaoh, and take my children, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. Moshe said to Hashem, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, that I should take the children of Israel out of Egypt? Right? So we see from here, who am I? The modesty of Moshe Rabbeinu. That is the small aleph over here. God is calling him, communicating to him, connecting with him, and he maintains his humble spirit. So very good. So we got the answer to our original question. We need to remain of humble spirit. So we can all go home. Okay. You're satisfied, Irma, Andrew, Ova, everybody else satisfied? No, why not?
There's got to be another punchline.
Well, no, he's calling to, it says he calls to him. Isn't that where the letter is smaller, or in the beginning?
Yikra, the letter aleph in calling.
Right, but the
God's
calling to him, he's trying to clarify God is calling to Moses, not Aaron. Because wasn't Aaron by his side at this time?
No. This is to Moshe. No, it says clearly in the verse only to Moshe. Doesn't mention Aaron. It's only to him, right? Okay, but so what do we see here? We see the concept of humility. What are we lacking? What are we missing? Well, we've started off with the value the uniqueness, the specialness of the person, right? That we started off. So let us go now to another place. In Divrei Hayamim, in Chronicles, it says Adam, Shes, and Enosh. And Adam, referring to Adam Arishon, the first man, is without big letter Aleph. So the obvious question is, what does that imply? We see clearly that there is a concept of humility, but at the same time, we see it balanced over here with a large letter, Aleph, in the reference to Adam Harishon, to Adam, the first man. What does this teach us? Well, to answer this, we need a story. Chaim. What's the story? It's a beautiful story of the Alter Rebbe with his grandson, the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek he raised because the Tzemach Tzedek's mother, Devorah Leah, passed away at a very tender age. A whole beautiful story about that, and her devotion to the Alter Rebbe, to Hasidic teachings, that she took upon herself to give up, literally to give up her life, but that's a story for another time. And as a result, the Alter Rebbe, the grandfather, the father of the Devorah Leah, took upon himself raising the Tzemach Tzedek, who of course later became the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, right? After his son, the Alter Rebbe's son, Dov Ber. So we have a beautiful story over here. Encounter small print. You know, it's always in the small print. Let me make it larger so you can see. Can you see it somewhat? Okay. But I'll read it. The previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, once described at a Pesach Faringen how the Alter Rebbe brought his grandson, the Tzemach Tzedek, to school when the latter was a small boy. The Alter Rebbe instructed the teacher to begin the studying of the book of VaYikra, where we're studying now. After his first lesson with the teacher, the young boy asked his grandfather, why is the Aleph in the word VaYikra small? The Alter Rebbe entered into a spiritual trance for a short while and said, very often the Alter Rebbe would get into a dveikus, as it's called, a cleaving, and he would be like, somewhere in Atzilus, I guess, in another world for sure, and then would come back. Adam, he's speaking to his grandson, was God's literal handiwork, about whom God testified that he was wiser than the angels. Adam was aware of his own self, of his own worth, and that eventually got to him, ultimately leading to his downfall with the sin of the tree of knowledge. Moshe, our teacher, Moshe Rabbeinu, he too was aware of his own worth, but not only did it not go to his head, the very opposite happened. It caused him to be extremely broken and humble, as he thought that if another Jew, not Amram's son and the seventh son from Abraham, would have possessed a soul as lofty as his and a pedigree like his, that person would have certainly outdone him. When God gave the letters at Mount Sinai, they came in three sizes: small, medium, and large. The Torah is written with medium-sized letters, conveying the message that a person ought to be a Beinani, as we're learning in Tanya, right? The middle ground, the intermediate, the one who has mastery ultimately over thought, speech, and action of our behavior, which he or she can achieve by studying Torah. Whereas Adam stumbled into sin by dint of his excessive sense of self-worth. The Aleph of his name appears in a large typeset. Whereas by contrast, Moshe achieved the greatest levels of humility by focusing on his unworthiness. So the Aleph associated with him is small. So we need to understand a couple of things here. First of all, why is the Alter Rebbe mentioning anything about Adam? About Adam HaRishon, especially when it's something negative about him. We don't say something negative about another. The Torah even goes to, strains itself to add letters and words in order to say positive things, only when there is something that has to be definitively said in a negative way for clarity or for halachic purposes. But here the Alter Rebbe is going out of his way to say something negative seemingly about Adam HaRishon. And the truth is the whole lesson could have been taught without saying that negativity, just learning it from Moshe Rabbeinu, just learning it from Moses, that he was the humble person, and that would have been sufficient. It wasn't necessary to add Adam to the mix. And especially, it's not something that would have been a question that a child that age would have had, because that large aleph in Adam is from Divrei Hayamim, from Chronicles, something that he would not have learned yet. Right? It's not from Chumash, it's later. So it's not something that he would have a question that, the Alter Rebbe wants to forewarn maybe something that he would have a question. So therefore he brings up about Adam, why they're the distinction, right? And another question is, the Alter Rebbe is saying that the large aleph of Adam is something negative, that he had a sense of self-worth that led him down a slippery slope. But is that the fact? Is that necessarily so? That the large aleph in Adam is something negative? Perhaps it's something positive. After all, it's in the Torah, right? If it's in the Torah, if a small aleph, if a medium aleph is a Beinani, so a large aleph, a tzaddik. And actually, there are commentators that do say that, indeed, that it is something positive. Text number 6 before us. There is a small aleph in the word VaYikra to teach us that though God personally called him and afforded him all this honor to constantly speak with him, Moshe nevertheless was always humble before God and the Jewish people. The aleph of Adam's name is big to teach us there was no greater person, either in a physical sense, for he was exceedingly tall, or in a sense of superior wisdom, which he demonstrated when he gave names to all of the animals. If you remember by creation, Adam took all the animals and named them. He didn't name them a lion and a tiger. He named them the word Ari, the word Dove for bear. Why? Because those are the letters that are the vital force of that particular animal, because he saw the presence of God's vital force in the animal that was animating it, as we learn, I'm sure all learned in Tanya, that God, we've learned in Chumash, that God spoke the world into being, but the very letters are the very vital force of everything that's being created. Adam was such a lofty soul that he was able to perceive in the animals the vital force of God animating, creating them, and therefore name them accordingly. That's a lofty level. But the truth is, even the Alter Rebbe himself speaks about Adam in this manner. As we see in Likutei Torah and other teachings and Chronicles, Adam's name is written with a large aleph in a reference to Adam's stature prior to the sin of the tree of knowledge. At that point, he was an extremely lofty level. So we see very clearly that this is indeed something very positive, not something merely negative. You can't just say that the reference here is saying something about a negative trait in Adam. It's something very positive. Any questions before we continue? Hi. We're clear.
Not quite.
Go ahead, Irma.
So I still didn't get what should be coupled. What should the humility be balanced with?
Oh, we're not. You're trying to get ahead of the game. We're trying to understand only now a couple of letters in the Torah. We're going to get there. Yeah, you're trying to be clever here and trying to get the answers before we understand the questions. First, we have to. The answers have to come from Torah. So we need first to understand in the Torah the issue at hand. The issue is a couple of letters here. This is a tale of a couple of letters, a letter Aleph and a letter Aleph, right? One small and one large, right? So some people say, supersize me. And so some people say, give me just, I'll just take a little taste. And we're saying both are from the Torah. Both are, the Torah is teaching us over here. Now we just learned both are to be positive, seemingly. And yet, the Alter Rebbe himself says it's positive in one instance. In other places, he's saying to his grandson that it led to something negative. So we need to understand what's going on over here. Okay. So what does it mean, humility? Excuse me, someone's at the door here. Hello. Hi, Avichai. Okay, come. I'm in the office. I'm teaching right now, but you can come in if you want. Okay. 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 What does humility presuppose? What precedes humility?
Greatness,
Right? Sorry, I didn't catch that over. Say that again.
greatness,
Rightness. Okay.
greatness.
Oh, greatness. Okay. Oh, Andrew?
I thought humility comes from accepting the fact that God created everything.
No. I didn't ask about what humility is. I'm saying what precedes humility. So Ahuva actually kind of said it correct. Greatness. In other words, yeah, I think it was Golda Meir, if I remember correctly. And please, for those who are the great historians here, correct me if I'm wrong. She once, I don't remember who she said to, what are you humble about? You're not so great. Humility presupposes there's something to be humble about. Right? That means you're not so great that you need to humble yourself. So ja, du bist ja gar nicht. Like you're nothing. So what are you making yourself humble about? You're a great person. You're an Albert Einstein. You're a great Torah scholar. Okay. In other words, there has to be something there to humble. If there's nothing there to humble, then what are you humbling? What's
Is
humble?
it your honor?
What do you mean by that? Is that Rena? I can't see.
Yeah, it's
Rena.
me.
What do you mean? No. Well, honor can be greatness. Honor can be. Greatness can be your greatness, whatever that is. Right.
Right.
But no, Ovis said it correct. There's a greatness that precedes the humility, right? So what does that mean? At the beginning, I asked the question, you feeling great? And you all said yes. I said, why? Because you're great? And the answer is yes.
Mm.
That's the true answer. Now, that's not necessarily why you were feeling great, but there is a truth to that, right? In other words, knowing your strengths, knowing your greatness, that's a beginning. Otherwise, that's not called humility. That's called meek. That's called timid, because there's nothing about you. You're like a fearful. You're a scarecrow and huff and puff, and there's nothing there. But if there's something there, that's what we're talking about. So Adam emulates the idea of recognizing your greatness, your uniqueness, your specialness, what's positive about you, what's tremendous about you. We need to be able to identify those qualities and those things that we have in our life that are as such. As the previous Rebbe would oft say, everyone should learn how to utilize their own positive qualities. Just as one ought to know his or her shortcomings, so too he or she know their positive qualities they possess. Now, let's take this apart for a moment, right? Why do you need to know your shortcomings? How come?
So we can improve.
Oh, very simple. Of course. If you don't know your shortcomings, how could you improve? How are you going to be a better Jew? How are you going to be a better person? It's impossible. So that is a given. That's obvious. That's drilled into us, that we need to know our shortcomings so we could improve them. And by the way, if you don't own your shortcomings, you know what? Don't worry. Someone will point it out to you. By the way, consider yourself lucky when they do that, because you were blind to it, so someone else pointed it out for you. That's good. It's a blessing. It feels like a curse. Okay, that's our issue. But now it'd be nice if that person would do it with loving kindness and not with but you get the point. So that we get. Here, the previous Rebbe is saying a chiddush. We also have to know our positive qualities. That's important. That's what Adam teaches us. That is just as important as Moshe is teaching us humility. We also need to know that we possess innately wonderful qualities. Things that we have collectively that makes us great, and things that we have individually that makes us great and wonderful. And that gives us why is that so important? Anybody? Why is that important?
So we can carry out our mission, our unique mission.
Over. Wow. Every Jew, the Rebbe says, this is from the Rebbe Sicha, every Jew possesses tremendous worth, and as such, any Jew can readily see his or her self-worth. After all, a devout Jew's true value flows from a holy and godly source, and as such, There's no concern that such thoughts of self-worth would ever lead to a negative consequences. What's more, a person must have the sense of self-worth so much so that at times it is only way to overcome the challenges of the mundane and material reality around us. When a Jew approaches his or her life with a proud and strong stance that flows from the holiness akin to a tzaddik, all challenges dissipate. So we need to know our self-worth because we're going to have challenges in life. And if we don't recognize that. Now, when we speak of self-worth, there's two qualities here. One is a collective one, as all Jews, and one is an individual, as me, as an individual person. I'm sure I've told the story before and you've heard the story before, but it's a beautiful story. As Mr. George Rohr, a great philanthropist and an amazing individual, an amazing person. So he lives in Manhattan, and many years ago, by dollars, this is like over 30 years ago, comes by the Rebbe and says, you know, Rosh Hashanah, I began a beginner's minyan. And we had 130 people for people who don't have a background. So, you know, he wanted to give nachas to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe got very serious, wasn't smiling, and says, no background? Every Jew has a background. Every Jew has the pedigree of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. They all have a background where they come from. We all have an illustrious chain that we are connected to. Now, I say, go back to them and tell them as such. And after the Rebbe said that, his smile came back to him. Right. So we all have, that's a collective, you know, as a Jew, something very special. But we also have individually unique qualities. And we need to know that because sometimes we're going to be challenged in life. And it's not enough just the collective greatness that we have, but also the individual qualities that we have. So as a chassid was once, the chassid of the Alter Rebbe, he was tempted by some event or some uncouth thing, and he turned to himself, hey, I'm a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. Ha! Ha! Passt nicht. It's not befitting. Ah! He knew his great quality. He is a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. Ah, this is unfit for me. Passt nicht. And so on. Now, of course, then there is, you know, the unique qualities that we do have of whatever it might be, of whether it's kindness, whether it's intelligence, whatever it is. And that comes from emulating Adam. That's the first step that we need to have, is to recognize that. Right. Now, of course, if we just stay there, what's the problem? And we don't go further. What's the problem? Margot?
Would it turn to arrogance?
Excellent. It can turn to arrogance. In other words, when we recognize where it comes from, in other words, the Rebbe says, go tell them that they have a background. They come from a lineage of the four fathers and four mothers, right? They have. Where's that come? I mean, they have a source of something that makes them collectively as a Jew great. And whatever even greatness that you have, it comes from somewhere. But what can happen is when we dwell on that individual or collective and individual greatness, we can get lost in it. And it can then easily be transferred over to our animal soul, to our ego, and we can become then easily very self-important. In other words, unique and special, yes, but that's different than self-importance. Self-importance means what? I gave the value to it. I gave self-importance, as opposed to the importance came from somewhere. Whether it's the patriarchs and matriarchs, whether it's, a talent that is a God-given talent, whatever, it came from somewhere. But because the focus would be on that greatness, it will inevitably come to a place of, again, self-importance. And this is what happened to Adam. That's what happened to him. And ultimately, he literally rebels against Hashem and eats from the tree of knowledge, good and evil, right? So therefore, what do we need here is the next aleph that is taught to us by Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu teaches us a message of a small aleph, that we have to have self-worth. But that self-worth needs to be something that is measured. What does it mean that it's measured? That it doesn't become my defined self-worth, self-importance, but it's measured because it came from somewhere. And with this, we can understand Moshe Rabbeinu, how he was able to take the greatness of his and to make sure that it wouldn't lead to being conceited. It wouldn't lead to a sense of self-importance. As the Rebbe explains in the Sikha, while in a state of holy pride and being cognizant of their own self-worth, we must be vigilant that our personal egos never get involved. Not only must we be aware of our own shortcomings, we must go to the opposite extreme, a radical sense of humility and selflessness. It is here that we see Moshe's tremendous humility, so much so that it served as an antidote to the sin of the tree of knowledge according to the tradition. The stain of the primeval sin was removed in Matan Torah when Moshe received the Torah of Mount Sinai. Moshe wasn't just a humble person. He was the most humble man on the face of the earth. He would measure himself up against every other person and conclude that if that person would have had my qualities, he or she would have certainly surpassed me. Right? So, in other words, Moshe Rabbeinu, did he recognize his greatness? Absolutely. He knew he had special powers. And that gave him the power and the strength to confront Pharaoh, to redeem the Jews. But he understood because it came from somewhere, right? So he didn't give it his own value system to it, his own self-perception of, and perceive himself in that greatness, because he would think to himself, since it's not my greatness, it's a greatness that I've been given. So now, to make sure that that greatness that I've been given will be utilized appropriately, and it wouldn't lead me down a slippery slope like it did for Adam, for Adam Arishain, he looked at every other person and said, wow, if they had my qualities, they would have achieved even more and done a better job than me. That was the the way to make sure that it would not become then self-perception, self-awareness, evaluation, and self-greatness. That's a very powerful idea. So in the end, could the Alter Rebbe just have told the story about Moshe Rabbeinu? Not fully. Because we do have to start with the big Aleph. When you're raising a child, you need to infuse them with how great it is to be a Jew, how great it is to do a mitzvah, how wonderful it is in accomplishing. You need to give them that there's something very special. Now, at the same time, it needs to be imbued that it's great, you're not great, right? It's great. Because when you're great, well, that's the slippery slope that you can buy. It's like a very nuanced thing, but you're giving greatness to them, giving value, self-worth. But at the same time, you're giving it in a manner that it's hopefully won't go to their head, because it's a nuanced way to give it. That will give them the capability that later on, they themselves can have humility, right? Can't give humility. You can inspire, the greatness. The humility is something that kind of, will come with that message. So it's a very tricky thing when you think about it in raising. So raising a child in that way. Oh, you're so great. You're so wonderful. And by the way, I've done it and you've all done it to our kids and grandchildren. Gotta be careful. Can you make it about them? And then planting the seed appropriately. You have greatness, but not you're great. A little bit of a difference there. It's like a hairbreadth of a difference in the wording, but it's worlds apart in what's implied. Worlds apart. The moment we make them so great is the moment we destroy their lives. The moment we make them great because they've been bestowed greatness, because not they're great, they've been bestowed it from their lineage, from God. Then they'll be able later to have the power within themselves that shouldn't get to their head, and they will have humility. That's a powerful teaching. Yes, so, sorry, who was?
Yeah,
Leah, go ahead.
sorry.
L'chaim. For
L'chaim.
this, we need a l'chaim.
I'm not sure. But as parents, we could essentially tell the kids that Hashem gave them talents. Therefore, they have the potential to be great and to do great things. They won't try things, and they won't do things that they don't feel good about themselves.
I'm not. I mean, we just said about bestowing greatness upon them, but it's very nuanced over here. I hope I'm clear in what I'm saying. Is anybody not clear? Is everybody clear? Thumbs up. That there's a nuance over here. You're bestowing greatness. You're not making them great. First of all, you can't make them great. How do you make someone great? You can't even do that, right? I mean, it doesn't even make sense. How do you make someone great? You know what I mean? like that. Oh, you're great. I mean, you're.
We always say, great job. You did a great job. Great job.
Oh, but 1 second. 1 second. That's a difference. A great job is a great job. The job can be great. That's a truth. I'm talking about you're great. I mean, you're great. What? Bestow greatness. You know, you come from such a great line of people. You have been bestowed with such a talent by God Almighty, with such a mind, that if you study Torah, wow. That's what Rabbi Yochanan said to Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish was a thief. He was a bandit. And it was coming after him when he was in the Jordan River, and he jumped after him. He said, wow, you're really powerful. You have such power. Such power would be great for learning Torah, he says to him. He bestowed upon him. Do you have greatness that can be used for greatness? Not you're great. You have greatness that has been bestowed upon you that could be used for something so powerful and so good. You could be studying Torah. In the end, by the way, he became a great Torah scholar. He's in the Talmud, Reish Lakish. But just a statement like that. He didn't tell him, you're great. No, actually, he was evil at the time. He was a bandit. But he recognized he had greatness that was bestowed upon him. It was just going out the wrong way. He had a fire, he had a passion that was destructive. So he told him, hey, you got a fire, harness it, that you could bring great warmth to this world. So we start off with Adam, and he had to tell him about Adam, because there has to be a bestowal of a big Aleph, of the bigness, the greatness. Absolutely. But at the same time, we got to do it in a way that it won't lead down a slippery slope, that it won't get to our heads. And therefore, as parents, as teachers, as grandparents, whatever, we have to be careful on how we do that, in order that they will have the power later, that when they recognize, their self-worth and uniqueness and specialness and greatness, that it will be humbled. Because indeed it needs to be. It needs to have that humility. Because why is it needed? Because firstly, it can go the wrong way. Secondly, it's not going to be harnessed appropriately. Because as long as I think it's about me, then rather than where it's coming from, forget about even going down the slippery slope. But in the end, then I don't really harness the great power that I have in that greatness. Because it's limited to me, rather than a lineage of generations, and coming from God. So it's not my power, it's a power invested in me by God. That's much more than as much as I could give it value. So therefore, the what I can accomplish with it is so much more as a result. So it's not just, checks and balances over here. It's about actually using out what we have in such a phenomenal manner, because it's coming from somewhere, not from my self-value and self-worth and evaluation of how great I am, but how great is this power that it's been invested within me that's beyond me. Is that clear? Powerful teaching. Amazing. Actually came out more amazing than I thought when I was learning it. Thanks to you guys.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Go for it, Andrew.
Was it the lack of humility that resulted in Moses striking the rock instead of talking to the rock, which of course resulted in his inability to.
That's a great question, and we're going to have to wait for that one because that's a whole class in and of itself. But in a brief answer is yes and no, not really. To really say that it was his lack of humility would not be completely correct to say. But how do I explain that? I don't know how to explain it in 30 seconds.
But wasn't it his anger towards the Jewish people for being such wretches?
For their lack of faith, yeah.
Lack of faith.
Lack of faith.
Wasn't
Right.
he angry?
Yes, but it wasn't that. It wasn't his ego. It wasn't that. That's for sure not. It was something more profound. It's a little more nuanced. We'll have to wait for that for a couple of months when the Parsha comes, maybe. All right. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead. Go.
Okay, so I'm thinking of other people. It's easy for us as Jews to sit here and go, yeah, I'm great. But humility said to me immediately, do not answer that question. Are you great? Don't answer it. So the question is kind of the reverse of what, especially when you're raising kids and everything else. What do you say to that where it sounds, where you do have humility? Do you know what I mean? The response can't be to people, yeah.
What do you mean?
Thank you. Well, I'm great. God's created me to be great because he's endowed me with that.
Right. So then you're not great.
I'm not great.
God, you're not, that's not how you would say it. You would say that God gave me amazing talents and I wish I used them out as best as I could. I know if someone else would have the amazing talents that I have, boy, they'd far exceed what I've done. Like Moshe Rabbeinu, right? So it's recognizing the greatness, right? But at the same time, being humble about it. So you're not denying it. You're not, it's not false humility, right? False humility was, I don't got it. What are you talking about? You have that greatness, not me, and you're just saying that, to act humble, but that's not really humility. Real humility means, do you really recognize that you have that talent? And you really recognize at the same time, you're actually broken, that you're not using it out fully.
Yeah.
So I don't like you're going around feeling, I'm on top of the world. No, you actually, because of it, feel on the bottom of the world because you have such an ability and yet you're not realizing it. You're not fulfilling it ultimately the way it should be. That's, so is it, that's real. That's honest. That's, and that will also, that sensibility will bring you to a place where you will actually then use those talents even more so, right? So whereas someone else will just fill their ego and therefore, put down another perhaps, or even if they don't, they feel greater than another. Here with that humility, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't feel he was greater than someone else. He felt less than. So likewise, we would feel that way. And in a real way, because the more you recognize the greatness that has been bestowed, and that's the key, came from somewhere. Ego, what does ego mean? Ego mean me, myself, and I. All of a sudden, I made it about me. The moment you make it about you, that's the beginning of the end. That's the key. Don't make it about you. Make it about where it came from. So you say, Baruch Hashem. Yes, I was given a certain talent. At the same time, you feel broken. I'm not using it out the way I should. I could do so much more. That's real. That's truth. That's a real life, a real person. Does that resonate, folks?
Amen.
Any other questions, comments, statements? Does that resonate?
That was really good.
Thank you. Yeah, as I said, I, in preparation, I knew it was good, but it came out much better than I expected. Baruch Hashem. Yeah, I'm just looking online to see if there's any. Okay, no. All right. So I want to thank everybody. Joel, Alice, Davida, Liba, Miriam, Art, Esther, and Margot, Tim, Irma, Rena, Andrew, Leah, Heather, who else is here? Celia, Uva, and Liana. Wow. Great. Can I have a good talk from everybody? Everybody say, put on your videos. Can you, first of all, put on your video for a moment? Everybody, if you could, that'd be amazing. Just for, Alice, Joelle, if you could, that'd be amazing. Can get at least a picture of you. And now, if you don't mind, everybody, I'm going to take a video. Say good tavach, Shavua Tov, a good week. And Chodesh Tov, a good month,
Chodesh Tov.
everybody.
Good
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, folks.
Asha.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
A good
Thank you.
Chodesh. God bless you all. We
Thank
don't forget tomorrow morning, 9:30. We have Tanya. So, the
7:30 here.
6:30.
some of you get up early. Okay, great. Way to go. Way to go. All the best, folks. Be well. Good to vote.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.